we're going to talk about an application that we're going to build to get a better idea of the differences between functional components and class-based components. We're also going to learn a little bit about states and lifecycle methods. Of course, these are very important concepts in the world of React, but you might have gathered that already. So, okay, here's the app that we're going to build. So it's an application that doesn't make sense and doesn't have any purpose, but it's going to make it easier for you to understand how class-based components, states, and lifecycle methods work. So right now, I just want you to focus on learning some of these key issues. Okay? Cool. So it's going to be an application that's going to detect which hemisphere the user is located in the real world. So we're going to say that if the user is located in the northern hemisphere, that means we have to actually detect our user's physical location when they visit our application. And if they are in the northern hemisphere, we will be able to show it on the screen. So I want to be able to print on the screen something like you are in northern hemisphere or you are in the southern hemisphere. So essentially, we're just detecting which hemisphere the user's in based on the user's location. So we're going to print different content on the screen based upon that information. And like I said, the application doesn't make sense, but there's going to be a ton of hidden challenges inside of here that is going to require us to get a much better understanding of how React works. So I want to quickly just generate a new application. So I'll just flip over to my terminal, and I'm going to generate my app on my desktop. And of course, you can choose wherever you want to save it to. And then I'm going to generate a new application with Create React App, and then I'll name my application Hemisphere, like so. So it may take a couple of seconds. Okay, so after we've generated a new project, I'm going to change into that new directory, and then I'll start up my development server with npm start. Okay. My browser's automatically launched now, and I'll see the default Reaction application up here. Now I'm just going to start up my code editor inside that new Hemisphere directory. Okay, so we've got a little bit of refactoring up in here. So the first thing that I want to do is pull in that semantic UI CSS library. We're going to depend upon semantic UI for taking care of some styling. I'm just going to search for semantic UI CDN. And of course, we find a link here at cdnjs.com. And remember that we're going to find the semantic min CSS file. And you can search for it quickly by hitting Command or Control F and semantic.min.css. So I'll just copy that. I'll go back over to my code editor and find my public folder and open up the index.html file. And then inside of the header tag, I'm going to put a link. And I'm going to paste it right in there like so. So then I can close off that link. Now let's go and check it in our browser. So I'll save this file and go back over to my browser and refresh the page. And I'm going to open up that network tab and see if I'm loading it up. Okay then. So let's flip back over to the code editor. And inside the src directory, we get all these automatically generated files. So we're going to delete them all. And then we're going to make a new file called index.js. All right. So now I want to flip over to a diagram because I love diagrams, but it's going to help us think about the different components that we're going to need to make in order to build this application. So I think that we need, in general, 2 different components, which we're going to need an app component that is going to be responsible for determining the location of the user. And then it's going to pass the location as a props down to a second component that we'll call hemisphere display. So then this component is going to be in charge of showing some actual picture and some text on the screen to tell the user that you are in the northern hemisphere or you are in the southern hemisphere. All right, so now let's flip back over to the code editor. And we're going to start to put together this app component. So inside of the index.js file, I'm going to import React from React, and I'll import React DOM from React-DOM, and then I'm going to make my app component. I'm going to create it as a functional component for right now, until we understand why we're going to need to make a class-based component. So inside of here, I just return a div that says simply, hello world. And then after that, I can do my React DOM render. First argument, I want to show an instance of my app component, and then as the second argument to this thing, I'm going to provide a reference to div with ID of root. So I'm going to say document.querySelector and pound root, like so. So now let's save this and flip back over to the browser to make sure that everything is working well. All right, see, so everything looks good. Okay, so now let's put together a little bit of scaffolding for that second component, the hemisphere display. So inside of the SRC folder, I'm going to make another new file called hemisphere-display.js. Then at the top, we will import React from React, and then create another functional component called hemisphere display. Now this component is going to return a div that simply says something like, hey, we're in northern hemisphere. And then finally at the bottom, export this component, and we'll say export default hemisphere display. Okay, so I think that's enough for this section. Let's take a quick break, and I'll see you on the other side.